Hello and welcome to Investing Confidential. I am talking to you today from again from Brazil. I've been here quite a long time, and I mean, of all the throughout the years, I've visited 40 or 50 countries and invested in most of them. Brazil is by far my favorite place to visit, my favorite place to invest. There's an old saying from investment people of Brazil. Brazil is the country of the future, and it always will be. Okay, and the reason they say that is obvious. Brazil is a volatile place where vast fortunes have been made. Brazil is a huge country. The land mass of Brazil is bigger than the lower 48 of the U.S., right? So obviously, if you include Alaska, forget it. But the lower 40, Brazil is bigger than the lower 48. Most of the country is Amazon, it's jungle, and it's a beautiful place, and at times tremendous investment opportunities arise. And today, I'm going to talk about what I think is another situation that is arising here. Could be very interesting. So let's talk about Brazil as an investment opportunity. As I mentioned, just to some background, Brazil is the largest country in South America, also one of the top 10 economies in the world. At one time, I believe it got up to number seven. I think it's back down to number 10. Uh, Population of close to 250 million people and a growing middle class. I mean, the middle class in Brazil is hard to define, but I would say that over the last 15 years, Brazil has grown a decent size middle class, but obviously you've got a lot of poverty. But just talk again about the economy. It's a large economy, very diversified. It's the one of the largest exporters of agriculture, commodities, including again uh, oil, but also the largest exporter of soybeans, beef, largest exporter of poultry, obviously coffee, and Brazil, believe it or not, has currently the largest supply of clean drinking water. And that's something that people don't realize, but it is has the largest supply of of fresh drinking water. And Brazil is famous for a few things. It's obviously famous for the amazing beaches. They have some of the best beaches in the world. It's also very famous for its beef. What they call the big cut here is called picanha, which you can't get in the U.S. Well, you can get in some places, but it's not something that the butchers in the U.S. specialize in. But it is something that is very unique to Brazil. But despite all these positives, Brazil is basically a case of hypocrisy, right? So you've got immense wealth, and the wealth gap here is massive because you also have some of the worst poverty on earth, and this you do have a large middle class, and that's it's growing, it's positive, but you do have this massive wealth gap. But on the positive side, Brazilians overall are very entrepreneurial. Okay, even I mean, it doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. They're hustlers. They're out there. The average Brazilian works at a job but has a side hustle. I mean, at least one. Most of them have two side hustles. So it's a place that's very very like the U.S. I would say I never understood why the policies of the U.S. government over the last 40 or 50 years has never been to embrace Brazil, embrace Latin America. They're our neighbors, especially Brazil. Very similar, large like the U.S. They have the people are from all over Europe, Africa, wherever, and it's a melting pot. Not homogeneous like some of the other countries in Latin America with just Spanish. This is Brazil's people from all over, and it's a wonderful place. If you have a chance to visit, I would definitely visit, and I'll hopefully give you some places to go. But it's also again hypocrisy, and so as you can see here, I mean, this is I walked to this mall. This is the stores, and these stores, you probably see in Beverly Hills, New York City, Greenwich, Connecticut, and it's right here in the middle of Brazil, the largest city, São Paulo. Um, but I mean, again, these stores are elite, okay? And then less than a mile away, you've got shanty towns. Okay, what Brazilians call favelas, okay, very close by. So this is you have a lot of these malls. I mean, super high end malls, probably more high end than than 95% of the malls in the U.S. Again, outside of Beverly Hills, New York City, and Greenwich places, or I think these malls are even nicer than the ones in Miami. But then there's a need for heavy security. See, this gentleman here, you mess around in Brazil, you're gonna have a problem. Okay, so don't mess around. That's why they have all this type of heavily armed security to protect people. Again, protecting the elite. And there are many reasons why investors are always interested in Brazil. They come and go, and it has a large internal market, its own growing internal consumption market. The average age in Brazil is younger than most countries. Again, I talked about the entrepreneur situation, and it's obvious this is a country that's very rich in natural resources. Okay, not just oil, but a lot of minerals. And again, most of the medications that we use today, a lot of them come originated from the Amazon, or you know get discovered in the Amazon. So Brazil is just an incredible place. Uh, but I can't talk about Brazil as an investment opportunity without mentioning politics, which is Brazil's curse. Okay, the political system is out of control. There's about 35 parties. So, like here in the U.S., we have two parties. Brazil has 35 parties, and it's crazy. And you have the political situation drives the economy and drives people in and drives people out. Okay, I'm talking about investors now. So current situation is this: you've got this guy they call Lula. He's currently the president. He won the last election last fall by a very slim margin against a Trump-like figure named Jair Bolsonaro. And the country is incredibly divided. Lula won by a very small margin. And like the US, you've got political divide on both sides. Half the people think the guy should be in jail. And by the way, he was in jail. So he was a president during a time when Brazil boomed, came in with very low expectations in 2000, 2003, rode the China wave. So China, he's a lucky guy, by the way. China got put into WTO in the early 2000s, and the massive consumption drove resource prices, commodity prices higher. Brazil is essentially a commodity base GDP, and Brazil took off. There were, I think, in 2007, Brazil probably set a record for the most IPOs. I mean, it was insane. I was investing in a lot of them, and you know, it was an incredible time. But obviously, internally, people knew that there was this thing called there's a really good documentary I call Mechanismo, the mechanism, and this is what the mechanism was all about. Lula's part of the PT party, basically stole billions from the government-run oil company Petrobras. Lula himself probably has over $1 billion sitting in the Vatican bank somewhere. I mean, this is common knowledge in Brazil, but for some reason, he was convicted, sent to jail, and then the Supreme Court changed and they let him out of jail. I mean, it was unbelievable. This guy was totally guilty, and now he's out, and he's now the president again. Okay, only in Brazil. So anyway, that's the current political situation, polarized. Uh, Probably the best case scenario in the short term because Lula can't do anything because the opposition still has Congress. But the bottom line is it's a polarized country. Uh, and again, that could be a positive, right, when you have polarization because there are green shoots going on. The good part about Brazil is they put a law in a few years ago to basically keep the central bank completely independent. There's a law. Okay, here in the U.S., the central bank supposedly is independent. There's no law protecting it, but we know about Powell and the morons that are in the Fed. But in Brazil, there's a law. So the central bank is truly independent, and they were very smart. Brazilians understand inflation probably better than anybody in the world. And Brazilians started raising interest rates way before anyone else. They saw inflation coming. They raised rates very high before the pandemic. And when everyone else was cutting rates to zero, Brazil was raising rates. Okay, and the country suffered. But today, today, right, rates are over 13%. So you can put money in a bank and get 1% a month very easy. And now we've got the situation here. and also in Europe, but we're suffering. I mean, Europe's suffering way more than us in terms of inflation. Our inflation has come down a little bit. It's not transitory, it's there, and it's very sticky. But Brazil's inflation is completely under control. And now here's the theme, the investment theme. We're going to see rate cuts starting in a couple of months that will bring rates down from its current 13% estimated down to 8-7%. But I'll go into that later. But so the economy. Brazil has a tremendous trade surplus right now, as you can see here. It's in very good shape, uh, mainly driven by exports, right? So exports are exploding. So whether it's coffee, whether it's meat, whether it's oil, Brazil is doing very well. Consumer confidence, as you can see here, is very high in Brazil, which is great, despite the politics. Usually, the politics hurt consumer confidence, and GDP, which is never really explodes because of the what they call the Brazil risk and all the high interest rates. Brazil's starting to recover. Okay, and then look at the stock market. Okay, the stock market has broken out. Why? Well, we talked about rates. Okay, rates are set to decline, as I mentioned, from 13 to 8%, or even lower by the first quarter of 24. That's always a good catalyst for stocks. And it does give a big boost because certainly now people cannot make over 1% a month with no risk. They have to go into equities, and people do that. And it's what the locals do. So the locals are going to be driving most of this move, uh, and the currency has stabilized. Okay, it was over 5.5. Now it's 4.7. But there's also risks. Okay, there's also a lot of risk. What's the risk? Currently, China, which obviously has been the major driver of commodity prices, is very weak. I'm going to do a video on China in the next couple of days. You've got the potential, or I think, the U.S. recession. We talked about the U.S. recession being in the big cities. I think it's for sure in the big cities. It may spread. And then the EU has confirmed they're in recession, right? Germany, et cetera, they're all in recession. That's not good for commodity prices and consumption overall. So that's a potential risk for Brazil. And the question is, how is this going to affect commodity prices? And so that in the short term, so that means your entry point is going to be the key. Okay, Brazil has broken out. Would I buy today? Probably not, but it is poised for a good run here. I mean, you look at EWZ, it there has some of the largest companies in Brazil, but they're also trade in ADR form here in the U.S. Whether it's Petrobras or even JBS, Petrobras being the oil company, JBS being the largest meat company in the world, by the way. But I would say that if you want really exposure to Brazil, the one you got to follow is EWZS. Okay, this is the small cap, but essentially what this is, it gives you total exposure to the domestic economy, where historically you make the most money. So Brazil, would I buy today? Today, no. And this is the week of June 26th, towards the end of the week. Would I buy today? Probably not. But the breakout has been confirmed. I would look for a pullback. Keep it on your radar screen. And certainly, this is something that I think makes a lot of sense for anyone looking to find something to buy outside the U.S. Because as I mentioned, I think the U.S. market is probably in for a long sideways slog going forward. So Brazil, great place to visit, great place to invest at times. I think we're in beginning of a cycle. We've had a breakout because of the liquidity. There has been much going on. There's people have been very under invested in Brazil. They're starting to get back in. Look for the next pullback. I would get back in, but the idea, on any type of investment theme is keep this on your radar screen. EWZS or EWZ. Again, a lot of these companies are listed here in the U.S. as well. So you've got to focus on it. Put some limits in below the market. Get invested because I think Brazil's in for a very interesting run, despite the terrible, terrible politics. So from Brazil to all you investors out there, be careful out there.